Hello and welcome to the Fore-All podcast. I'm Jesse Morrison alongside Max Bechtoldt. And Max, the streak is over. The United States has won the Solheim Cup. They staved off a bit of a comeback from Europe on Sunday and were able to get it done. Just overall, your thoughts on the whole event that was held in Northern Virginia this past weekend?
Yeah. So I'm going to get it out of the way right away. One of the really the only big controversy we saw this year at the Solheim Cup was the transportation issue and some of the ticketing issues that on Friday led to, some fans not even getting in. I know a lot of fans getting in a lot later than they thought. We're not going to go into that here. I think it's a very valid story, and I'm glad that other, outlets are covering it. But over here, I want to keep the focus on the event. And the event itself, I thought was terrific. I thought this was a Solheim Cup that really gave you a lot of what you wanted. I was a little bit worried about it going into Sunday because the United States did hold a pretty significant lead. And you kind of worry that it's just going to be kind of a boring Sunday. But it wasn't. It was really dramatic. The Europeans really felt like they had a chance for a while. There's about a good hour and a half toward the end of it where it started to get a little too close for comfort, I think, for a lot of American fans. And I think that's just the fight that the Europeans put up. But incredible performance by the Americans. For the most part, top to bottom. I mean, there's not a lot of people that played poorly in this Solheim Cup. I think really almost everybody from the Americans, there's something positive to take away from it. So I thought that it was great performance by the Americans. The top of the American team looked like they're in incredible form. The Europeans, like I said, they struggled at times, but they did, never give up, and they came back with a fight. So I thought it was a great event.
Yeah, I mean, to me, just it was unbelievable from a crowd perspective. Like that was just I haven't seen a crowd like that at a women's golf tournament. The galleries were absolutely massive. Um, you can tell that it's such a meaningful event in the golf world. And you call it the biggest event of the year, even more than the majors. I think we saw on Sunday and over the weekend in general why it is such a big event. I wanted to go into with you just your thoughts on how Stacy Lewis and Suzann Pettersen's teams ended up performing and their picks and kind of what you thought of the rosters after playing this event.
Yeah, I mean, I still think the United States, even though someone like Jennifer Kupcho didn't necessarily play as well as you'd hope, even Lexi Thompson didn't play great. I still think that Stacy made the correct 12 picks. These were the right 12 people to be on the team. I think that she got a little bit lucky that she didn't have to kind of save somebody because the 9 automatic qualifiers were the correct 9. The 3 captain's picks I thought were great. And I thought Stacy Lewis just did an incredible job. I thought she did great last time as well, but she improved even more this year. And bringing that team together, we talked about how, the Europeans are the ones with all the chemistry usually. They're the ones who you never question how much they care about it. They're the ones who kind of get really energetic and fun. And I thought those roles were reversed. And I think you have to give a lot of credit to Stacy Lewis for that. I think she had a clear message to her team, and the team bought in, and they all seemed like they're having a blast. I mean, for most of these players, I've never seen them have more fun on a golf course. Now, on the flip side, I thought the Europeans, this kind of felt a little muted for the Europeans. And obviously, it's tough when you go down 6-2 right away, but you could just kind of tell over the first 2 days, their body language just felt really defeated. Now, they did rally back on Sunday, which I'll give Suzann Pettersen credit for there because I do think she rallied her team up. But I think, I hate to be, because I was wrong about some things, but I hate to say this, that Albain Valenzuela, I was questioning that pick before, and she didn't really have a role on the team. And I don't know why you're going to pick someone if they don't have a role. She only played twice. She went 0-1-1, played totally fine. I mean, yes, she surrendered the winning point to the United States. That wasn't really her fault, though. That was more Lilia Vu playing great golf. But that is just one that I still question a little bit. And obviously, there's a lot to question about Suzann Pettersen's captaincy this year. I think a lot of people got tired of the Leona Maguire conversation. Every single time they showed Leona Maguire on TV, it was, why wasn't she playing more? That was a question I was asking myself all weekend. Uh, I also thought some of the pairings, she went away from Lynn Grant and Carlota Saganda really quick as a pairing. I think that's a pairing that's worked in the past, and I think you need to keep going back to it, even if it doesn't work the first time out. And, Charlie Hull and Georgia Hall were a duo that I really thought was going to play well in this Solheim Cup and play together a lot of rounds. They didn't play until the fourth session, which they won. So I think that Suzann Pettersen, I do think Stacy Lewis out-captained her pretty thoroughly.
Wow. All right, the energy though, you mentioned that just it was of the United States in particular, and how that was, elevated from the Europeans. Do you think that's course location, fan support, they're
I,
out for revenge, or a combination of kind of everything?
I think it's a combination. I do think the fan support out there, I think they're really embracing it right away. I think that's part of it. I think Stacy Lewis's message, the unfinished business motto, which kind of seems like a cliche, but they bought into it. I think that was part of it. And I also think, I kind of said this last week. I think Lauren Coughlin and Sarah Schmelzel, their stories, they're in their 30s playing in their first Solheim Cups. I mean, both of them are older than Lexi Thompson, who is likely playing in her last. And I think that having those two players who are kind of living a dream that they didn't think was probably possible coming into the year. And I think the other players seeing how special it was to those two and saying, you know what, this is the greatest event. We do need to come together and play, strong as a team. So I do think it's a combination of a lot of things. I think it's just a perfect storm that led to the United States feeling more energetic. I've never seen, like I said, players like Rose or Nelly have more fun on a golf course than they did this week, I think.
And you mentioned Rose, young guns. They showed out, Max, including
Yeah,
Rose. That
Rose
was
Zhang.
pretty awesome to see.
I will admit when I'm wrong. I was dead wrong on Rose Zhang. I was very pessimistic about her Solheim Cup. She was incredible. One of the best Solheim Cup performances ever. That's not an exaggeration. She's the first person to go 4-0-0 and never reach hole 16 of the event, or 17 of the event. So she was blowing people out. On Sunday, she just dismantled Carlota Saganda. Her putter was on fire all week. She had that energy. She brought the best out of Andrea Lee also. Like, Andrea Lee, what a surprise as well. And they just meshed so well together. And Rose just kind of kept building that momentum all week. I think American fans have to be really excited about her and the future of her in the Solheim Cups after this performance.
Yeah, and I hope just as an individual, this kind of gets her going more into being kind of that dominant player that we all think that she will be after this performance. Megan Khang as well. She played well.
She's the one that I'm declaring the MVP. While Rose Zhang was incredible, I think for the second year in a row, Megan Khang left as the United States MVP. She brings that energy. She brings that fire. She went 3-0-0. She blew out every opponent she was playing. She brought the absolute best out of Nelly Korda. She brought the absolute best out of Allison Lee in both their matches. She's 7-0-1 in her last 8 matches dating back to 2021. So this is a player that is just kind of the face of the United States Solheim Cup team, I think, at this point. And she was magnificent this week.
And Nelly Korda played well for, and then Sunday, but she played well most of the time.
Yeah, I think she was actually probably the best player on the United States through the first 2 days. Obviously, she hit that major snag, but going up against Charlie Hull is always a difficult, task. Charlie Hull played the best of anyone on Europe this week. And so you got to see the best versus the best, the biggest star on each team. And Charlie Hall came out on top in pretty dominant fashion, but it shouldn't take away from Nelly Korda. Obviously, that pairing with Allison Corpuz, where they're now 4-0 over the last two Solheim Cups when paired together. We got to see her finally play with Megan Khang, which is something that I've really been hoping for over the last couple Solheim Cups, and they were electric together. Nelly looked like she was just having a blast out there, and I do think she had a great Solheim Cup, even despite the finish.
Yeah, and I mean, not everyone's going to play well for the entire tournament. We can give her some grace for, not having a good performance. It's and they hung on to wins, so who really cares? What surprised you the most? You feel like you've kind of already been into this, but what kind of surprised you the most
I
about this
mean,
whole tournament?
Rose Zhang and Andrea Lee obviously was a big surprise. Leona Maguire, again, only playing 2 sessions. I don't want to harp on it because everybody else in golf media is, but it's still baffling. And she's been a little outspoken about maybe not being too happy about it either. And I don't really blame her. But I think the surprise, and maybe it shouldn't be a surprise because we were predicting she would play well. And we've been talking about her every week on the podcast. Lauren Coughlin, 3-0-1 in her first Solheim Cup. Like, way to rise to the occasion. Like, when people are kind of curious about you because maybe they haven't watched your wins, but they've heard about, oh, Lauren Coughlin's won twice in the last 6 weeks. And then you come out and you go 3-0-1 in your home state. You battle back to get the half. She almost had the clinching point, if not for an amazing Maya Stark putt to extend the Solheim Cup. Just what an incredible performance by Lauren Coughlin. And again, maybe I shouldn't be surprised, but it is just still so jarring to see how confident she is every time she steps out on the golf course.
It's really cool to see somebody who has, you know, grinded and grinded and grinded and wasn't one of these phenom players. I think I've said this before, just get to that point because I feel like we can all relate to that,
Mm-hmm.
wherever you are. Usually I feel like most people in the world don't start off as phenoms in whatever field they go into. It takes a while, so it's kind of cool to have a player to relate to like that. Over to your biggest disappointments, Max. What was disappointing to you in this tournament?
Oh, well, I think it's pretty clear from the United States perspective, Allie Ewing, who I thought was going to have a nice bounce back Solheim Cup. She's never really played well in the Solheim Cup. 0-4 record this week again. She's now 3-12-1 over her career in the Solheim Cup. It's probably, I know she's great in the team room, and I hope that she can kind of come back in the future as an assistant captain, potentially a captain down the line. I do think if she doesn't qualify automatically in the future, I do think she'll be left off future teams because now this is 4 Solheim Cups in a row that she's played poorly. And I was really thinking because she's been in such good form this season that we'd see something different. But that was still a disappointment for the United States. Over on Europe, I mean, it's tough to like point out a single thing that went wrong. Everyone just kind of played average on Europe, and that just wasn't enough to kind of go after the incredible play of some of these Americans that we've talked about. Lynn Grant did disappoint me, 0-4, but again, I think she wasn't done a lot of favors by the pairings. I didn't think her pairings made a whole ton of sense, and so while she went 0-4, she did keep that match with Cupcho alive for a long time on Sunday. Who knows how that would have gone if the Solheim Cup wasn't essentially already decided. That's kind of the weird and interesting thing about the Solheim Cup is that you still play even after it's over. But yeah, Lynn Grant. I mean, it's hard to say that somebody who was winless wasn't a disappointment.
Lexi Thompson probably played in her last Solheim Cup. Just how would you rate her performance? How would you rate the reception that she got? And how bittersweet is it that you're not going to see her again? Most likely.
Yeah, her performance was very much a mixed bag, probably as much as anybody in this Solheim Cup. And if not for a few holes on the back nine on Sunday, I think we would have been talking about being a really good performance. But when you give up a big lead like she gave up, Celine Boutier played tremendously. She was putting like, I mean, obviously she's one of the best putters in the world, but she was putting phenomenally, even for her standards. She was hitting great shots. She had to overcome the distance difference between her and Lexi. But Lexi losing that match, or yeah, losing that match was kind of rough. Other than that, I thought she played okay at times. Obviously, that match with Lauren Coughlin was great. I think she was the motivator, kind of. When you saw Stacy Lewis, first person she handed the trophy to was, of course, Lexi Thompson. The players were all chanting her name when she got the trophy. She was out on the first tee every day. In the press conference earlier this week, she did say that she hopes to be, involved in the teams in the future. Stacy Lewis said that the next captain needs to make her an assistant captain. I 100% agree with that. So it's bittersweet to see her be over for her on the course in the Solheim Cup, but I know that this isn't her last Solheim Cup, being a part of. So that softens the blow a little bit.
And where do the Europeans go from here after a disappointing event? I mean, they're not going to win every single one. So at some point, the streak is going to end. But that being said, where do they go from here?
This has been the question I've been wrestling with ever since Sunday afternoon. I don't really know. It's a really, confusing situation for them. And I think it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't, which is going younger. I think you look at some of these players, they've got, we talked about the experience all week, but we're going to be sitting here in, maybe 2, maybe 4 years, maybe 6 years, where some of these stalwarts on the European team are going to rotate out, and you're going to have really inexperienced European squad. And so I think next year they need to start rotating in some of these really young players that might be on teams in the future. Maybe rotate off. I don't think Emily Pettersen will be on another team, even though the next Solheim Cup is in her home country. I think she'll probably get an assistant captain role, but I don't think she'll get another chance to play in one of these. And so maybe you rotate in a young player for her. Maybe you have to decide between Anna Nordquist or Carlota Saganda, which one you're going to bring again, and maybe rotate another younger player in. It's a tough situation. I do think they have a pretty clear candidate for captain, which is Mel Reed. She's been assistant captain twice. She's still knows the players really well. She really, I think, clicked with them well this week. I think she's looking pretty solid to be the next captain, unless Anna Nordquist takes on a player captain role. But I think that, you start with Mel Reed, who brings a lot younger, more upbeat energy, and you go from there.
All right. Do you have any last takeaways? Anything I forgot to bring up, you forgot to bring up from the Solheim Cup in 2024?
No, I mean, it was a great event, and the United States, I think, looked like they should look because they are the better team. And even though they struggled a little bit on Sunday at times, I think they came out and took care of business. They finished the business. And I think this was a Solheim Cup where so often in the Solheim Cup, we see some kind of controversy happen between the two teams. Last year it was the tie, and Spain maybe or in Europe maybe celebrated a little bit too much for tying. And the year before, or 2 years ago, there was the Nelly Korda, Madeline Sagstrom putt fiasco. Like there's been issues in the past. Suzann Pettersen, obviously, in 2015 was a part of a really big controversy. This year did feel like a positive week for the LPGA. And I think it was an opportunity to show off a lot of the positive attributes of the players, their personalities, their sportsmanship, how they came together as teams. And I think that's a really big takeaway to take from this week.
Just a fan controversy this year.
Yes,
which is kind of better, probably.
I think it is, because no players are at risk of coming off bad, which I do think is a good thing for the LPGA. So
there you go. All right. Well, it was awesome to see the United States in their streak. Obviously, as we mentioned last week, Max and I are Americans, so we were happy to see
I'm
the
gonna be
Americans.
honest. I was rooting pretty hard for them. I had to stand up for like the last 40 minutes and pace throughout most of it. Like it was a fun experience. It gave you that fun, really tense experience that you really want from the Solheim Cup.
All right, well, Max, what do you have on Fore-All.com? That's FORE dash all.com. What do you have up there right now? What are your latest articles that people need to be checking out?
A whole ton of Solheim Cup kind of recap, speculation, stuff like that. I got grades for every single player on both teams up. I've got grades for both captains up. I had today, I speculated on who the 12 players on the next United States Solheim Cup will be. I also speculated at the next captains for both Solheim Cups. So there's a lot of that up. And then this week, obviously, we've got the tournament in Cincinnati. So there'll be a bunch of content up about that, some predictions tomorrow, and then coverage throughout, recaps, all that kind of stuff. So
We'll be back next week, talk about that tournament in Cincinnati as we kind of get to the slower part of the season, but there's still
I'll,
tournaments. They're still tough to talk about.
I'll throw out my prediction right now. I do think Nelly Corda wins this week. She's looked better every single time we've seen her over the last few events. She looked great in Paris for a while. She looked great for the most part in Scotland, and she looked great at the Solheim Cup. I think she peaks here this week and wins versus somewhat of a lower end field.
I think I'm gonna agree with you there this week. I think she gets first win in a little bit for her.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a few
Since
months.
May, yeah.
Yeah, it's been a few months, which is weird after how crazy she started the season. But anyway, we'll be back to talk about that tournament next week. And just keep going along here. It's a fun, exciting time. For Jesse Morrison, that's Max Bechtoldt, and we'll talk to you later.